Hello and welcome to this last facial feature study for this little mini series that I'm doing of each facial feature in 1 hour. So we're going to be doing the nose today. And I have a little bit different setup than we've done in the past. I'm trying to test this out, so let me know what you think. Maybe it's a little bit, might be a little bit weird. My head is kind of off to the side. Anyway. Hopefully it's not too distracting for either of us. And as far as materials, I've got some clay. This is non-dry modeling clay that I got from Dollar Tree, melted together some of the colors to get this brown. I have a little skull reference, might use that a little bit just to talk about kind of the structure around the nose. I'll be using just some basic tools. We've got a homemade loop tool. There's a lesson on how to make this one on the Proco channel. If you just look up sculpting tools, and on the Proco 3D channel, there's a lesson that goes over all sorts of tools. Also have this one and a simple butter knife. So let's go ahead and get right into it. 1 hour is not a lot of time, though the nose is, I think, generally a little bit easier. If I had to say, I'd say the nose is probably the easiest out of the features. The mouth, the ears, the nose, the eyes. Yeah, the nose is probably the easiest, but still 1 hour is not a lot of time. So let's go ahead and we're going to start with the center line. Just going to build up a wall of clay. And throughout this series, I've been trying to emphasize the importance of having structure to your sculpture. So that means thinking about the anatomy underneath, thinking about things like the primary forms that are basically like a simplified version. You can think of the primary forms as like if you took the head that was a realistic head made of wax, and then you like took a torch or something and melted away a lot of the wax so that all of the details were removed, but that you'd still get the basic shape of the head and kind of the like a subtle indication of the features, just barely. That's what I'm talking about when I say the primary forms. It's just a very simplified structure upon which we can build the rest of the features. So for the nose, I like to start with the center line and then add on just an indication of the brow. So we'll say that this is the brow line. Just gonna come over there. And we're also gonna give just the slightest indication of the eye sockets and things, but here you can see there's the brow. So that's this right here that I'm laying in just this cross shape. And so we've got that in place. Now let's go ahead and do the silhouette or the outline of the nose from the side view. Put this on this side. Let's put this right here out of the way for now. And so let's go ahead and do that. We'll say that the nose is coming out. We're just thinking about this very two-dimensionally, like we're drawing the outline of the nose from the side. We're just thinking about basically one plane or one direction. Like if you took a cross section of the face, what would that look like with the nose? And we're just laying that in. And I'm going to try to also show you guys a little bit more of the anatomy of the nose, kind of those basic structures to look for. So I might exaggerate those a little bit more than you need to do in your own sculptures, but that just kind of helps to establish what's going on. So there you can see we've got the nose, tip of the nose kind of turned up just a little bit, and we'll also give a little bit of an indication of how that nose transitions to the upper lip with the philtrum. That's this part right there. And we'll bring the nose a little bit forward. And so that, let's bring the tip of the nose out just a little bit more because I want to have some room in here for the nostrils and other things. And the nostrils actually travel back behind this philtrum more than we realize. So I'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to the nostrils. But I just want to give myself plenty of room. We'll say that the portrait is kind of almost leaning back a little bit. We can actually build out this entire study just a little bit more. So I want to make sure that I have enough depth to be able to lay in everything that I want to. And a common mistake is doing these studies too close to the surface, but we want everything far away from the surface with these. These are like, we're trying to get basically the realistic proportions. It's not like a bas-relief study where you're kind of pressing things against the backboard and trying to kind of press those features in. We want those features to be realistic in their dimension in space. And so we want to give plenty of room for that. Okay, it's a little bit better. Let's tidy that up. So there you can see, try to think how I like that. I'm just going to kind of press things around until I feel a little bit more comfortable or good with the silhouette. We want the silhouette to be pretty, I would say, accurate. If you're sculpting a specific person, you definitely want this side silhouette to look like them. You want it to be very accurate because then you base all of the other features off of this silhouette. When we're doing a study from imagination, we don't have a reference. It's just kind of an anatomical, practice study. You don't have to be as careful to not mess up that silhouette because you can just change it later on. But if you're doing a specific person, I recommend to really hone in that silhouette because that gives us the framework to, or the reference to base all of the other measurements off of. So, but for this, that silhouette right there is a good place to start. So now I'm going to just kind of think about the bones here, the cheekbones, how they're moving back from the nose. I'm going to start laying those in and just give a little bit of an indication of the eye sockets as well. Oh, whoops, there goes my skull. No more skull reference for this video because I don't want to go pick that up off the ground. So we are just gonna, that was it. So hope you got a good look at the skull and remember exactly what it looks like for the rest of the sculpture because I'm not going back. There's no going back. We are just moving forward and we're going to just keep adding clay like crazy. So I'm just, for the eye sockets, I'm just gonna kind of fill in this area. Don't need to worry about any of the details of the eyes. I'm more just focused on how does the nose transition into the eye socket, and we're going to leave those eye sockets completely free from details that might distract us from the purpose of this study, which is the nose. If you're interested in those other studies, there's those videos. An hour-long study. I recommend sculpting right along with me as I'm doing these. Just try to build up the sculpture just as I'm doing. And if you're really interested, if you'd like more of these types of videos, then you can find those on my Patreon page, as well as there's courses, online courses that take you through sculpting, how to sculpt using clay, traditional sculpting methods. And those are a great resource for anybody who's interested in traditional sculpting, which is what I love to do. So I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. We don't need that to go down so far. And right now I'm just kind of sloping this to get something to build some of these forms of the nose on top of. So let's do the same thing on the other side. we are making some progress. You could see that even though we only have an hour, it's not a lot of time to sculpt, but I'm taking my time. I'm not in a hurry to get a bunch of clay on all at once. I'm sculpting very thin, which is what I always recommend, because it's much easier to develop the subtle, soft, organic forms of the body by building things out slowly with little pieces of clay than it is to form those by removing clay with a tool. A tool just is a little bit more difficult to find those subtle forms. So that's why I recommend sculpting that way. Thin, start thin, simple, slowly build out the forms. We might give just a little bit of an indication of that mound of the mouth that we talked about last time in the video on sculpting the mouth. And we did sculpt a little bit of the bottom of the nose in that video, but now we're going to be taking that to the next level. So this is just this area right here under the nose. You can feel the bumps that your teeth make in that area. Okay, now kind of looks like a mustache or something, but that's what we're looking for. So now let's go ahead and I'm trying to decide if I like this side view. I think I'd like to change just a few things before I keep going. Okay, well, maybe smooth it out just a little bit. It's kind of a, what do they call it? Ski jump nose, where it kind of sloped. That's a little bit better. Okay, let's go ahead and start thinking about the other forms of the nose. So we have the bone that's right here. You can see that transition on me where it transitions from the bone of the nose to the cartilage. The bone is kind of in this area right there. I can feel it on myself. And the rest, this is all cartilage. So that bone is like in this area. If we were imagining the skull, or if you could see the bones of the skull through that nose, it would look something like this. Go up. And then, actually, I probably should grab the skull because there's something I wanted to show you guys. So let me grab that skull off the ground. I'm getting off of my comfortable seat, going onto the ground to grab that skull just for you guys. Oh my goodness. It's because I'm like so close to the table that it's hard to get off the seat and everything. But for you guys, I'll get off my seat and go pick up the skull that I dropped. So that should be worth a like and subscribe to the channel. So this is the feature that I wanted to mention. It's this little bump right there. It's the anterior nasal spine of the nose, and it's a really good indication on the skull. You can feel it on the bottom of your own nose. If you just feel right there, there's a little bony bump, and that is, it's like a marker on the skull that says this is where the nose begins. And so that's a really helpful thing. And you can see that I've kind of laid in this part of the nose right here just to kind of give an indication of that bony structure, something like that. And this bony structure slopes, like it's soft in the way that it transitions to the side of the cheek. I'm gonna add that in a little bit. Very soft transition. A lot of people like to sculpt the nose as if it's just like a square that's stuck on, like a box that's stuck on, but it actually slopes quite a bit. Very smooth, soft, swooping transition from the the nose right here to the side of the cheek. There is a plane change, but it's very subtle, very soft. So I want to give an indication of that, and then it comes here, to the bottom of the eye socket, something like that. Okay, I just wanted to do that. In a normal sculpture, I wouldn't do like showing the bony feature underneath as much. But for this, with a demo, it just helps to tell you guys, oh, this is what's going on underneath. This is what you should be aware of. But it's something that, master sculptors understand that that's what's going on, and so that's why I do it, is because even though they might not sculpt that, they understand that that feature exists, that it's there, that they understand the shape of it and how that informs the surface of the sculpture. So even if you don't see them sculpt, this anatomy underneath, it's still present in their mind, and they're thinking about it as they're working. At least I try to think about it. Okay, so let me move that out of the way. All right, so now let's think about the nostrils. So like I said before, the nostrils, the tip of the nose to this transition to the upper lip, if you double that distance, take that distance from there to there, and then double that, we'll come back here. That's usually about where the nostril ends. So if you look at the nose from the side, there's the tip of the nose, there's the lip right there, and then back here is that corner of the nostril. A common mistake beginners make is they push this corner forward and then this back, so it looks something like this. And you can see that doesn't look very good at all. It looks hideous. So we want to make sure that we give enough space for that nostril. So let's go ahead, just add in the start of the nostril. Some people's nostrils, they're a little bit, up a little bit more. Some people have nostrils that are a little bit down, that curve down below the tips of their nose. Just depends on the person. Observe yourself if you're using yourself as reference, as I'm doing here, and just see, about where do the nostrils go in relation to that tip of the nose. And for me, it's a little bit higher. It's a little bit raised up above that other side. Let's do the same thing on this side. Also, we want to make sure we're going back that correct distance. And so there we have those nostrils. Now, so there's the forms of the nostrils. Let me put this in. And then on top of those, there's two forms right here. Here you can kind of see the tip of one of them, and they're kind of these rounded, like pillowy forms on top of the nostrils. I don't know if you can you see that on me? It's kind of, there's kind of a transition from there's the nostril, and then there's this other form that runs right here. And so we're gonna go ahead and lay that in on either side. Don't want it to be too thick. Remember, we're sculpting thin. That helps. And this one kind of is on top of that form of the nostril, and it travels a little bit of a different angle than the nostril. The nostril is more back like this, and then this form is more, it's like in between the angle of the nose and the bottom of the nose is somewhere in between there. It's that angle of this form that's kind of moving back into space. And then generally there's a softer, let's see, on me at least, there's like a more rounded part right here, and then it kind of flattens as it moves up towards that bony area. That's the case with my nose. Might not always be the case for everybody, but it's something that I've noticed in myself, that it's kind of flat here, and then it rounds off as it transitions into that cartilage. And So got that there. Then, okay, so there we have some anatomy laid in there. So we've got the bone right there, transitions to the cartilage right here. We laid in like where that skull, or where that that bone of the nose would be right there. There's the anterior nasal spine. That's this right here. And now we're starting to build up that cartilage on top of the nose. Let's maybe make this just a little bit taller of a nostril, something like that. So that's what that is looking like. Same thing on the other side. Just add just a little bit more, lift that up. And then there's a fat pad. So there's a fat pad that starts right here and travels down towards the corners of the mouth. And that's this right here. This right here. And this crease is the naso for nose, labial for lips, nasolabial crease. And that fat pad on top of the crease is the nasolabial fat pad. So let's go ahead and add that in. So this is going to be a fat pad that starts above the nostrils, and same thing with the crease. The crease is above these nostrils, and then that travels out to around the corners of the mouth. So with these studies, what I always what I try to communicate is that I'm trying to understand the form of the nose in relation to everything else that's happening on the face. So I can't ignore all of that other information that's going on. I want to have that laid in, and that's why I'm putting in that fat pad, as well as an indication of the upper lip, the eye sockets. I want this to help me better understand the entire portrait, not just a study of like just this section of the nose, like away from the context of everything else that's going on the portrait. So let's add in those fat pads a little bit. You can see that makes it look like an older person when I add in those fat pads. The fat pads become more visible as you age because the fat pads shrink a little bit, and so the area in between the fat pads becomes more prominent. So if you just add those fat pads, it automatically just makes the portrait look older because of that. But as we smooth everything out, then it'll kind of go back. Let's just add a little bit more mass to the upper lip, because there's a lot more fullness to this upper part of the lip than we generally realize. Common beginner mistake is just to leave it like this, where it's kind of like almost like a concave area. There's like not a lot of mass in this area, but that's not how the upper lip is. There's actually quite a lot of fullness in this area, and the nostrils of the nose are almost like clamping on to this middle part of that upper lip. So they come around and they kind of like squeeze, almost like a C-clamp. They're just clamping. Let's see, can you see? They're just like clamping on to this part of the lip. So I want there to be that fullness there that gives these nostrils something to grab onto, and that's exactly what I'm trying to lay in. So now I can start to, now that I've kind of got an idea of what's going on with the anatomy, and we're about 24 minutes in, it looks like. So now I'm going to start to kind of blend things together, work a little bit more on the details, take a little bit of clay. I'm looking at my own nose in the camera. I have an external monitor, so when I look off into space, I'm not looking into space. I'm looking at either the sculpture or myself in the mirror, what you guys are seeing. And I found that it does help, like even just seeing the sculpture in 2 dimensions on this external monitor that I'm trying to check every so often. It just helps me make sure that the sculpture's heading in the right direction. Sometimes it's hard to, in your mind, translate the 3D sculpture into 2D, but when you have a screen, when you're recording it, then that is just done for you, so you can do it without thinking too much. I'm going to just add a little bit more clay under here, and something like that. Boop. Boop. The sound effects, again, that helps. That helps as you're sculpting. Make little sound effects to let the clay know that you're excited about sculpting. Okay, let's add some to this nostril over here. Boop. And looking at it now from the front, these nostrils kind of wrap around at the bottom area, so I'm just going to add that like a little piece of clay there to say that these nostrils kind of wrap around right here, kind of wrap and tuck under. And now I'm comparing from side to side to try to match those nostrils. I might even draw in a center line because we don't want to lose that center. And when we're sculpting something symmetrical like this, a center line is always helpful, just to keep us on the right track. Make sure we're not losing the symmetry. Though my actual nose is asymmetrical, you can see that like one side is like completely different than the other. So in reality, my nose is not symmetrical, but I'm going to pretend that it is. I'm going to pretend that I'm not a hideous monster when it comes to my nose. And my ears too. You see my ears, they're like pinched elf ears. Okay, and then also going to add just a little bit. And this area under the nose, it's thin up towards the, like a little bit towards the tip, and then it kind of widens as it moves out. And the nostril itself is like a bean shape. It's kind of hard to see over here. So I'm just going to lift this up just for a little bit so that we can look under. And sometimes looking under, seeing the shape of the nose from underneath, that can be really helpful. So I'm going to see that. I'm going to kind of work on that symmetry, make sure that symmetry is looking good from underneath. Then I'm also going to lay in that kind of bean shape of the nostrils. As I'm working, just take this and come in and remove just a little bit of clay right there. Say that there's like a nostril, and then this widens towards the base. This form right here widens on me as it moves towards the upper lip. So I'm just gonna give an indication of that. Same thing on the other side. I feel like there's just a little bit of mass. And changing the angle that you're observing the sculpture is a great way to just get a fresh view. You're seeing things anew and checking your reference from the same angle, hopefully, so that make sure that you're symmetrical. Sometimes it's easier to see that symmetry from underneath or from above than when you're looking straight on or from the side. So keep that in mind. I also felt like I could widen out these fat pad areas. Let's see. So it's looking a little bit better. This nostril might be a little bit tall compared to the other side. Let's kind of shorten that a little bit. All right, and then I'm going to kind of start to fill in a little bit these inside areas. So areas between these forms, I'm just going to take little pieces of clay and start to fill that in. Now this area right here, there's generally a sharper transition and then it softens as it moves. You know, it's sharp here, softens as it moves up. So I want to try to capture that, that change in the transition between the nose and the side of the cheek, because that subtlety of how that transition is going from hard to soft, a sharp transition to a smooth one, is really important for, you know, capturing and getting a realistic looking sculpture. Also going to add just a little bit more over here to these to kind of that side of the nose right here, fill that in a little bit more, because when I was looking at it from below I could see that those areas could use just a little bit more mass. Okay, let's do the same thing on the other side, little pieces of clay, filling in these kind of crevices, empty valleys in between the mountainous facial features or forms of the nose that we've laid in. Changing the angle, trying to look all over. Same thing on this side. There's going to be a sharp, a sharp transition in here, and then it'll soften as it moves up. Let's fill that in a little bit. Use my tool to kind of push things around, push the clay around. And looks like we're just about halfway through this study, and the structure is looking good. It's feeling good. So let's continue. Let's keep going. Make this a nice looking nose, handsome nose if we can. If we can get there. Okay, I'm also going to take little coils of clay and just on either side of that philtrum, that little like that little, what do you call this? Like a little valley here in between two peaks of the upper lip, right after the nose. And how we looking? That's a little bit better. Okay, now let me see. I'm actually gonna zoom in at all. Oh, that's as far zoomed in as I can go. I don't want to move things around at this point, so hopefully you guys can see what's going on. What's going on? And okay, keep trying to make sure that the symmetry is getting closer and closer instead of further and further away. From accurate. If I see that there's one side, there's just a little bit more mass, I'll try to put a piece of clay to match those sides up. Okay, now, let's see. I'm looking at my own nose and that to get a sense of those forms. Myself. Wake in the morning, step outside, take a deep breath, get real high and I scream at the top of my lungs, what's going on? And I said, hey, 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 hey. Okay, I probably shouldn't sing for you guys. Just lost all the viewers of the video. Okay, so it's looking a little bit better as far as symmetry goes. Also going to kind of soften this transition right here that's going towards the eye sockets, little pieces of clay, softening that up and rounding it, bringing my finger over to just round that a little bit more. So for me, I find that it goes from, pretty rounded up here, more flat right there, rounded again as it moves into these two forms. And then, we could even give just a little bit of a crease in between these forms. Let's go ahead and take my smoothing out tool. This is the tool that I like to use for that. Let me make sure that I'm in focus. I probably should have done this earlier, but I just want to make sure that I'm relatively in focus as we're working. And now I'm just, I'm coming across the surface, removing some of the fingerprints and other things. If I need, I'll take a little piece of clay to fill in some of these negative, some of this negative space in between the forms that needs filling. I'm just kind of coming around, coming at the form from different directions, smoothing out, just kind of turning the tool to try to get a good connection and rolling the tool over the surface to smooth things out. Sometimes I make tool marks that I don't like or don't want, and so then I can come back and smooth those out. Let's try to keep a little bit of an indication of maybe a little bit more of a separation between these forms of the nose than what I have. You can kind of see it on me. You can kind of see it on my nose. Oh, we're over here. That's because I move around as I'm sculpting, and I don't realize that I'm off camera. I did that really bad with the first ear study. It's like half of the sculpture I'm just off away from the framing, just enjoying myself, sculpting, talking about what I'm doing while you guys can't see anything, which is very frustrating. Okay, so the same thing, taking little pieces of clay, gonna just come in and round off this form of the nostril a little bit, something like that. And I'm also going to I'm coming along the form here with the fat pad just because it's kind of awkward going the other way. But then I'll take, maybe I'll take this other tool and come across the form, which is what I generally recommend doing when smoothing. Coming across the form tends to yield a better result. So that is what I recommend. Come across the form. If the form is traveling in this direction, I want to come across this way, maybe cross-hatch just a little bit, but when you come along the form, it just doesn't look as good. It just looks amateur, embarrassing, humiliating. So don't be humiliated. Don't embarrass yourself by going along the form like some idiot. No, I'm just kidding. Doesn't make you an idiot. It makes you a novice, because I used to do the same thing until a better sculptor told me, hey, that leg will look better if you take a tool and wrap around the leg. The leg's going this way, so right now you're coming up and down like this. Take a tool, wrap around like the flat of a knife or something like that, wrap around that leg, and that will look better. And guess what? He was right. It did look better. And I've tried to pass on that tip ever since, because it was a very helpful thing when it comes to texturing and finding a surface. But you can see this same principle in the sculptures of the masters, stone sculptures that are unfinished. You can see the tool marks of how they would kind of wrap across the form. So if they're sculpting, like if this was an arm, then they would come across this way with the chisel, a bunch of chisel marks this way, and then they would kind of cross-hatch the other way. So they're like 45 degrees to the form in different directions, but they weren't coming across or along the form. And they understood that principle very well, or they learned that. And it really does help you find those organic forms better. And it's the same thing with tool. Tool is just like you're carving the surface, similar to stone sculpting. It's a little bit different. I'd like to do, eventually like to get into a stone sculpting course. So I could show you guys, the tools to use and how to take a piece of stone from your yard and turn it into a sculpture, which is a video that I did recently, the Queen. If you look up that video on my channel, you can see how I took a limestone boulder, like rock, from my yard, and then turned it into a sculpture. If you do that, you just have to check and make sure that what you're sculpting isn't like radioactive or toxic or anything. So you do have to be careful. I recommend, get stone from a quarry if you can, so that they know what's going on. It doesn't have asbestos in it or something like that. But yeah, you can take a ordinary looking stone and turn it into an extraordinary sculpture. Extraordinary. And I hope you do just that. So now I'm kind of adding like a little bit more of a ball nose. Let's just give like a little bit more separation between these two forms, because this is a study and I want to emphasize the anatomy a little bit. Even though some people, this just rounds off. You can't really see this separation. On me, you can see it, and it's asymmetrical. Let's say we're 42 minutes in. Let's come over on this side, do the same thing we were doing on the other side with smoothing out the textures. Taking pieces of clay, smoothing it out. And I said, hey, 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 hey. And so I'm doing this for a competition that's coming up, a portrait sculpting competition. That's why I'm trying to refresh my memory on all of these facial features and share with you guys in the process. So I'll try. I don't know how much I'll be able to record of that, but it's held by the National, what is it? National Sculpture Society, NSA. What is it? I don't know. Anyway, there'll be a video, and I'll talk more about that coming up. I'll try to share that competition process, and my humiliating loss. I've held and done a bunch of competitions and never done very well in them. There's one competition where I felt that I should have won, just because my figure sculptor, it was a male figure, and mine looked the most like the model. But so we left the model for the judges, and then the judges were like, well, we don't want to use the model, we're just going to look at the sculptures without the model. So even though we left the model for them to see like how the anatomy of the model and how the model was and who captured the best likeness, they didn't look at the model. So so they just looked at the sculptures. They're like, oh, we don't want to be tainted by the model that they used to reference as they were sculpting. And then it was the funniest thing. The sculptor that was the judge, he was like, let's have the model stand up. And he's like, everybody here, oh, let's see, you guys can't see. He was like, everybody here sculpted the neck too long. And then he goes up and he like points to the model, and he's like, "Oh, I guess he really does have a long neck." It was so, and I was pretty frustrated. I was pretty bitter about that because, and it was like everything that he's like, you guys all sculpted, the back muscles too defined. Oh, he really does have a defined back. So it was all just like silly. It was like, well, if you would have just looked at the model, and seen what we were seeing, then maybe you would have judged it differently. But I got points marked off because my sculpture didn't have a base of clay. So it was just on the flat, like, wood base. The feet were right on the flat wood base. And I guess, that's a no-no, I guess, which I didn't, at the time, I didn't know that you don't do that. You build a base of clay so that it lifts it from the base that it's standing on. And so afterwards they were saying, oh yeah, that was one of the reasons that you were docked. So I was kind of upset about that, because I felt like those weren't, well, I guess obviously I'm biased, so I was biased, but even the model came and said that mine looked the most like him. And usually, the person that you're sculpting is a pretty good judge of what they look like. But that was a fun experience. But I love even though not placing in the past has always been kind of like, oh, I thought like maybe I could have gotten something, and then you don't. But it's just a great experience because you get to see how other people work, you get to see their style, you get to see what the judges look for, what they like, and just a great experience to be able to sculpt. And speaking of that, if you're still watching, you're probably enough into sculpture that you might be interested in coming and sculpting with me in my barn studio that I'm working on right now. And I actually want to do a Kickstarter. I'll see if I end up doing that, but I'd like to do a Kickstarter to raise money to fix the barn up. I have a barn on the property, and I'd like to fix it up to be a studio so that I can do some in-person workshops with you guys, so that you can travel to Iowa, kind of the middle of nowhere, to a little small town that's free from distractions, because there's nothing to do here but sculpt. And so if that sounds interested, then keep an eye out for that Kickstarter. I'm just gonna put like some digital products and things like that, my ebooks and some other things, and try to just raise some money for fixing up that barn, because right now it's not, it wouldn't be ready for a workshop like that. It needs quite a bit of work to make sure that it's functional and then also safe. I'm shoring up the foundations and things like that, and so keep an eye out for that. If that's something that you're interested in, send me a message on Instagram. Just say like, hey, I'd like to have information. My Instagram's AndrewJosephKeith15. And so just send me a message, hey, I'd like to be notified once you know more about when you're doing those workshops. The plan is to start them in 2025. So there should be some time to get ready. And yeah, it should be a fun thing, a fun experience. Let's see. So, let me check that profile, make sure I still like what's going on there. I feel like I want to change that up just a little bit. Okay, this nose is not looking terrible. What do we have? Like 10 minutes left, so let's start to work on this lower part of the nose. Again, I feel like the nose is the easiest feature. I don't know if that's the case for everybody, but when compared with the eyes, certainly it's easier than the eyes. The mouth I find to be more tricky. Even the ears there's just some strange things that are going on that we don't look at the ears as much. But the nose, it's plain as the nose on your face. It's very fairly simple when compared to the rest of the features. So I feel like that it should be just a little bit easier, and this one has felt a little bit easier. And I felt like, I don't know, because I'd have to go and do the ear and the eye again, but I feel like I'm getting back into the swing of things. So it really just takes like an hour a day for a couple weeks of practice to really get back into, if you've had a break from sculpting or something, or if you just struggle with an area of the body and you just sculpt that area for 1 hour a day. Just take a break from social media for an hour or something else, set a timer when you can have a break and just sculpt something. If you could do that, you'd be surprised how fast you can improve. That's when I really saw quite a bit of improvement on the portrait, was when I did something portrait related every day for, I think it was just 2 weeks, like 2 weeks. But I would sculpt the eyes, I would sculpt the nose, I would sculpt something on the portrait, and it really does make a difference. Really does improve your ability to represent those forms when you just build up a little bit of muscle memory and memory of the forms themselves, observing, thinking about things, so not just sculpting mindlessly without reference and kind of making things up as you go, but purposefully and intentionally sculpting the features and forms of the face, maybe having some art books as a reference so you can see how others represent the forms, whether that's through drawing, painting, or sculpting. Just seeing how others do it is really helpful. And just sculpt. Just do it. Just start, because it's really fun. A story that I've told before, and one that my grandma, she's still alive, she's 95. She probably wouldn't like that I tell this story. But she, almost every time that I see her, she kind of expresses the regret that she has for not pursuing art in her life. And the excuse that she gives is like, oh, when I was a young mom, one of the kids got into a tube of paint, ate the tube of paint. I was panicking because back then, they put all sorts of poisonous stuff in paint, and so I called poison control and told them the color. I think it was vermilion blue. And I don't remember if that's the color, so anyway, told them the color. They said, oh, that color doesn't have poison in it, and so they're just going to have some colorful diapers for the next little while, but no serious harm. So after that, she was kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I can't do this right now. And that's the excuse that she gives. And she's 95, which means that her youngest child moved out of the house over 50 years ago. And so, I every time I think, what, that excuse, it really doesn't wash. And now her excuse is, just taking care of the house, or there's always so much to do. And it's true, there's always other things you can do. So if you don't make something a priority, it will become, you just won't get to it. You won't, if you don't make important things a priority. And I'm not saying that art is important. Maybe it's not important. Maybe you shouldn't make art a priority like I've done, because it's tough. Like the studio that I'm working on, if I was a great, well-off artist that was, a millionaire or something, I wouldn't be doing a Kickstarter to raise money just to fix a barn. Like the materials, it's not crazy expensive, but it's maybe $10,000 to $20,000 of materials if I wanted to get it to the point where I want, with like a electricity, bathroom, and all of these things. And if I had, if I was really well off, I would just use my own money to do those types of things. So I'm not saying that you should prioritize art, but I'm saying that if art is something that is important to you, then set aside time, because you don't want to be in the situation my grandma was in, where she just feels like she missed out on that part of her life because she didn't prioritize it. And she has that, she lives with that regret. But I'd say, same thing. I'd say certainly Same thing with like family, like prioritizing those important relationships. You don't realize how important they are until that person is gone. And I struggle with that. You know, I'm on social media or something, and the kids are there. You know, they're young, they're in the house, they're looking for attention, and I'm not always as good at giving that attention as I should be. And they're going to be gone. You know, they're going to be gone before I know it. They're going to be grown up and out of the house, and I'll just miss, you know, that. And I'll realize that there were hours and hours where I was doing something that was absolutely mind-numbingly unimportant, you know, just scrolling social media or something like that. And, you know, I'll live with that regret. I can feel it now, but that's something I got to work on so that when that does happen, I can think, well, you know, we still made some good memories. So, anyway, that is an encouragement to not put off things, because before you know it, you know, life goes by, time goes by. You get older, things happen. But if you're somebody that is as interested in art as I am, then you're basically miserable. You know, you just feel like you're missing out on something if you're not doing something creative. And I actually really so I've been kind of changing my focus to working on the barn, to fixing up this barn into a studio space that I can work and teach in, whether that's online or hopefully in person. That's what I'm really hoping for, is I can get it to a point where I can invite people and they can come and learn. But as I'm working on it, you know, it's just, you know, construction stuff, you know, shoring up the foundation, nailing boards in and doing some flooring, and it's just this construction type stuff that it's very manual or menial. So one of those words that you use, but I enjoy it because it is creative. It's you're creating, you're making something better than it was. You're sculpting your life, you know, your property. Well, it's not mine in the banks, but you know, making something better and putting, you know, investing that time so that the property itself that the barn is on becomes worth more. In the home, as I fix up the home, it becomes worth more. And a sculpture, you know, you take a sculpture, a piece of rock, and invest time and energy into that rock, and it becomes worth more. It really does. It's a strange thing, but value can be created from almost nothing, and there's no limit to that. There's no limit to the amount of value you can create for other people if you're willing to do things that are worthwhile and that other people find valuable. And maybe that's why I'm not, you know, a multimillionaire at this point, is I just haven't done things that people find super valuable. So that's something I need to work on, that we all could work on. But my hope is that in the future, you know, people will find value in the things that I do, the videos I create, or the content, the instruction that I try to give, because, you know, we only have so much time, and hopefully we can leave this world a little bit better of a place than the way we found it. I found that in this video we're coming up, well, I'll just finish with this, that I've been kind of talking more philosophically and stuff, and somebody commented, it's like the new Bob Ross, and I said, I wish. But maybe that is something, I don't know if these live videos will take off or anything, but that is something that might be fun, of doing kind of a Bob Ross style, you know, relaxed, calm video, just talking about different things, and I really like his style, and he was obviously incredibly successful for an artist in a interesting way that was kind of new, and he found a market for it and was able to do very well. So there we have it. We're coming up on 1 hour nose sculpture. So I hope that you were able to sculpt along with me and get a nice looking nose study out of this. Again, I'll let you guys know what happens with that competition. If you can and you're willing to, then I hope that you'll consider purchasing my online courses. There's a Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course, which I recommend for beginners. It kind of goes over everything that I wish I knew when I started sculpting people. There's a Portrait Sculpting course, which is a little bit more advanced, goes more into anatomy of the face and the portrait, and we do a bunch of studies like this, and really fun if you're interested in portraiture. And then there's a hand sculpting course. We all struggle with the hands, and so I also did kind of a little shorter of a course. It's cheaper than the other ones on sculpting the hands, and so I hope you'll consider purchasing those. It really helps me out. There's also my ebooks, An Artist's X-Ray Vision on the male figure and the female figure, and I'll let you know if that Kickstart gets going, and to hopefully get a studio space where some of you guys can come and sculpt along with me, or because I would love that. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you can stay creative, stay productive, and maybe I'll see you in the next video.